Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blind Buys, a brand new podcast where we watch and discuss movies we've bought sight unseen. I'm Jesse, and with me, as always, is my collector in crime, Josh.
Hey, thanks for joining us for our second episode where we'll be discussing Jesse's blind buy pick, The Red Shoes. That'll be at the bottom of the hour, and we'll have a lot to say about that movie. But first, I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone who has listened so far to our intro episode and our first proper episode about Almost Famous. We really appreciate all the kind words and star ratings on podcast platforms and just in general the support we've received. It feels really nice to know people are listening and getting to enjoy the show so far as much as we've enjoyed making it. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone listening so far.
Yeah, it's been great to hear from friends, and we also set up an Instagram account, Blind Buys Pod on Instagram, where we'll be dropping our announcements for new episodes and also putting up some other fun content related to stuff from the show or just interesting things happening around the world of physical media. I put up a video about the original DVD of Almost Famous and the 4K, and then talked a little bit about boutique releases and how those differ from stuff that we've seen in the past. So keep your eye out there. There's some other fun stuff planned in the weeks and months to come, and I think that can be a real fun space to interact with listeners old and new. So keep your eyes out for that on that space.
Well, I guess we can just jump right in here with the discussion of what we've been watching lately, at least since our last episode. Jesse, what have you been watching lately?
Well, right after we recorded Almost Famous, I had my wisdom teeth extracted a few days later. And yeah, so that was my first time under general anesthesia, and I knew I might have a couple of days where I could be out of it. I wasn't sure what that would be like. And as it happened, another friend of mine, Josh, who is a great movie friend of mine, was posting all these Gerard Butler watches and calling it like his Greenland 2 preparation or something like that. And I was like, what is Greenland? I have no idea what Greenland 2 is. And it turns out it's, who knows, maybe the most important geopolitical film of our time, given what's happening. But anyway, I didn't know about Gerard Butler's Greenland. I looked into it, and a lot of people were excited about it. And I looked into my own Letterboxd watchings for Gerard Butler, who is sort of famously like the new king of like straight to streaming genre pot boilers. And I'd only watched really just 300. And I guess Reign of Fire, which isn't really, he's not even really the star of that movie. He's like fourth build. So I thought, okay, I should check this out, see what these Gerard Butler movies are all about. So I told my friend, give me a list of Gerard Butler movies that I need to watch to sort of catch me up on the excitement for Greenland. And he gave me a few. He told me to watch Greenland, of course, and then the first Greenland from 2020. And then also the first Den of Thieves movies and Olympus Has Fallen. So sort of as a nice little Gerard Butler starter pack. And so I got Den of Thieves and Greenland from Scarecrow because I saw that Olympus Has Fallen was on Tubi. Because I love Tubi. We love talking about physical media here, but I subscribe to a couple of different streamers, and Tubi is just generally awesome for the breadth of its content. Like they have a lot of stone cold classics up there, but also lots of really, really weird, obscure things that are just fun to watch. And it costs nothing. Their ads are pretty unobtrusive generally. Like I grew up watching linear TV, so I can deal with some ads, and they've gotten a lot better about placing them. So I fired up Olympus Has Fallen, I think the day after the surgery. So I was kind of out. It didn't mess me up too much. So I was ready to watch some Olympus Has Fallen. But I noticed within the first few minutes that the curse words were like not bleeped out, but the audio would cut out momentarily whenever a character cursed or something. And I thought, that's kind of strange. Yeah. Am I still under the effects of the anesthesia? What's happening here? But then, I mean, Olympus Has Fallen is an extremely violent movie. It's like terrorists attack the White House.
Yeah.
So you've got like armor-piercing shells cutting dudes open, like within the first 15 minutes. And then the whole screen started getting blurred out whenever really violent things happened. And I'd never seen that happen before.
Not just like parts of the screen, right, where the gore was, like the entire screen.
No, it's like the whole frame went out of focus. Like you could still see the motion and stuff, but the whole frame went out of focus while bodies were being eviscerated on top of the White House when the gunship is flying over. And this happened, and I was like, whatever's happening here, I am not going to watch Olympus Has Fallen this way because the violence is why you go to Olympus Has Fallen. So I turned it off. I've never seen this happen on Tubi before. So I ended up renting that from Scarecrow also on a Blu-ray and watched it. And I guess maybe the copy they got from their distributor must have been edited in that way for some reason, because I don't think Tubi actually, they don't care about that. They put there's all sorts of, lurid stuff that you can watch, movies that have full frontal and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know if that just got past their quality control somehow, but anyway, it just goes to show that you don't know what versions of these movies you're getting on streamers. Even a place like Tubi, which to me is generally like kind of one of the good guys in the streaming world. Anyway, and I also rented Pantera, the second Den of Thieves movies, and of those Gerard Butler movies, the Den of Thieves ones were easily, like far and away, the most fun. I genuinely enjoyed the hell out of those movies. I mean, the first one is kind of like they're taking off or cashing in on like the Ocean's movies for sure.
Oh, really? So it's like a heist movie?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a heist. It's a heist movie, but also Heat. It's kind of like Heat mixed with Ocean's 11. In a way, Heat is easily the one, like every Letterboxd review you see will say, oh, this is like garbage Heat. And it absolutely is, with Gerard Butler in the sort of Pacino role. But then the second one takes place mostly in Europe. And that one is almost more like a Ronin ripoff.
Okay.
With the De Niro movie. And for me, like the action's is really well staged. It's all done like there's great car chases. It's all done with like real cars and stuff. But really, it's just Gerard Butler's sort of swarthy persona that he adopts as this like kind of bastard cop who is really good at his job, or really good at busting heads and taking down bank robbers and stuff. But then the interplay that he has with O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's son, who's like the sort of co-star, especially of the second one. The second one's kind of like almost like a buddy thieves movie between him and O'Shea Jackson Jr., and they're just so great. They're so great together. So that was kind of the highlight block of programming that I watched, I'd say, over the last couple weeks. And there's a lot of other fun stuff in between. But yeah, Butler Bedlam is what I called it. A lot of fun.
Nice.
What about you? What have you been watching?
Well, I finished my Jacques Tati journey. I finished watching all 6 of those that came in the Criterion box set. And basically, I've just been kind of living in like a Tati world for the last couple of weeks. I've been listening to the soundtracks of all the movies, as I'm driving to work, or if I have to, bunker down at work and get something done. I'm listening to the Tati soundtracks in my headphones. Like, I just was so like swept off my feet by the craft of those movies and just how like easy they are to watch and just kind of fall into that world. And the soundtrack is a huge part of that too, and so I think that's why it's really stuck with me the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I was able to knock all those out. I've been kind of getting on a Tubi kick here too. I watched The Wizard of Gore so that I could listen along with our pals at the Laurie Strode Trap House podcast. That was on Tubi, unedited, uncensored, completely as was intended by the director on Tubi, perhaps to its detriment. But yeah, that film has a performance by Crispin Glover that kind of has to be seen to be believed. So if no one out there has seen 2007's The Wizard of Gore, maybe check that out. Maybe listen to the episode of Laurie Strode Trap House where they talk about that film at length. I watched James Gunn's feature debut Slither from 2006.
That's good.
Yeah, I watched this while building a nightstand that's going in my future daughter's room. So that was some weird juxtaposition there. I had a really good time with this movie, though. I thought the effects were good, but obviously dated. Like, you could see that there was starting to be kind of like a heavy reliance on the gore and effects that were maybe like in wide shots or like in heavy action moments. Those were very CGI heavy. But then like the up close gore of like these little like these slithering aliens kind of like burrowing their way into people's bodies and then eventually becoming kind of like a hive mind. A lot of the close-up stuff was very practical, and so I was glad to see that. But I was kind of taken aback at like the goopiness and kind of like the obvious computer-generated, circa 2006 effects not having aged the best. Knowing how James Gunn is nowadays with his CGI artists and making the big superhero battles, kaiju monsters, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how our friends Kev and Anna navigate that as they move along. So Laurie Strode Trap House is going to be covering the broad ambit, I think, is horror in the 21st century, essentially. But a lot of when they're covering that sort of like 2000s trashier before the sort of so-called prestige horror boom of the teens. I'm very excited to hear them talk about their experiences with watching potentially dozens of those movies.
Yeah, there's no shortage of those out there. I'm definitely along for the ride with them.
You mentioned that the Crispin Glover. I need to get into. He has some really sort of cult picks that people are really into that I need to go back and get on. Have you heard of Ruben and Ed or the Beaver trilogy?
No, I don't think I have.
Yeah, they're both from this director, Trent Harris. These movies that Crispin Glover made in like the 90s and 2000 that people rave about as sort of like, this is the weird stuff that he kind of wanted to be making instead of appearing in the latter day Back to the Future movies. So those are a couple I've been meaning to check out for a while.
Yeah, it doesn't even look like the Beaver trilogy has been logged by our friend Kev, who, is a self-proclaimed Crispin Glover, super fan. So I'm putting that challenge out there to Kev right now. Log Beaver trilogy here in the next 2 weeks. So we can get that on your letterboxd. Last thing that I watched recently, right before this recording, was we had a watch party over in the Bat and Spider Discord, a kind of impromptu thing. The first thing that we watched was Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, which is a 1972 film by Bob Clark, who also did Black Christmas, among other things. It's about a troupe of actors who go to this graveyard and they're going to perform a ritual with dead bodies, and they're going to, see what happens there. Once it gets going, like, it really goes for it. There's a whole zombie plot. The incantation doesn't appear to work at first, and then surprise, it does, and they're not prepared for, the carnage that they've kind of unleashed in this cemetery. There's a lot of like crazy 70s costumes, like sweater tees, wild necklaces, and crazy patterned pants and all that. So a lot of the joy in watching that movie was watching like the set design and the costume design and all of that. So that was a lot of fun. And the second one that they played was Cruel Jaws from 1995. Bruno Mattei's kind of blatantly plagiaristic shark movie, taking shots from every sharksploitation movie that you can think of. And then kind of intercutting that with this Hulk Hogan kind of looking guy who's kind of leading the charge. I had such a fun time with this movie. They literally rip the Star Wars score more than once in this film. I don't know how this movie is able to exist in the world today, especially having been put out on Blu-ray by Severin, I think in 2020. I don't know how they did it, because they're copying from so many movies just blatantly. It was a great watch, but around every like 5 minutes, I'd be like, that is a direct shot from Jaws. Like, this is the music from Star Wars. Like, why is this able to be seen legally? It's so funny.
Depending on where it was produced, sometimes maybe the lawyers just at the time didn't care. It might be easier now to like sort of create a cease and desist letter and send it off, but back long ago they might have been like, what's on the table here? What's the loss to us? And maybe that was a better time when we could just do a little thieving here and there to make something fun.
And then the last movie that they played in the watch party was Vice Academy 3 from that 6-movie box set that I think Vinegar Syndrome put out of those films. I was not able to stay awake for the entire Vice Academy 3, but it seemed like everyone was having a great time. And
you mentioned box sets, and there have been some some big announcements for some upcoming releases since the last time we talked. Most notably, the Criterion slate
Yeah,
for
their
April.
slate for April.
Yeah. But what? So we have Gilda, which is an upgrade, a 4K upgrade, is coming. Ernst Lubitsch's Trouble in Paradise, which I don't know if that is that a. Let's see here if that's an upgrade or not.
Oh.
Yep, that's an upgrade. But then Monty Python's The Life of Brian, Point Blank, John Borman's Point Blank, and John Singleton's Hood trilogy. And then also thrown in under the Reborn Eclipse series, we have Kinuyo Tanaka's directs and settled what it looks like 6 movies there. And then Begon's Resurrection under the Criterion Premieres line, formerly known as Janus. What was it? Janus Selects. I've already forgotten what it was called. Yeah. So what looks good to you among that crop?
So I'm definitely grabbing Monty Python's Life of Brian. That's one of the ones from them that'll be a blind buy for me, but I've heard about it my entire life. So I'm definitely grabbing that. Can't wait to see what that's all about. And I'm grabbing Point Blank for sure. I've heard several people rave about that over the last few days since these announcements came out. So I knew I had to grab that for sure. Trouble in Paradise, I've been really enjoying watching some of those like earlier pre-code comedies, and so I think that kind of slots right in there with the rest of those. So I'm definitely going to grab that. Gilda, I have the Blu-ray copy of already, and I was gonna try to get to it during my Noirvember challenge last November, and that just didn't happen. So I'm wondering if it would be worth it for me to upgrade to the 4K, not having seen it at all. I'm not sure.
I haven't. I've seen it. Gilda's awesome. It sort of, single-handedly makes the case for Rita Hayworth as like a megastar. Yeah, it's pretty great. Glenn Ford's great in it too. But I think the Blu-ray is going to be enough for me. And as I haven't bothered to look, but I'm sure Criterion didn't upgrade any of the features, as they tend not to, especially for these like upgrades of newer Blu-rays. So I think whatever I have is going to look good enough for me. But I would certainly recommend anyone who doesn't have it to pick it up if they don't have the Blu-ray already. It's a great movie. Yeah, I haven't dipped into Lubitsch movies really, but some of our friends who are really into the sort of golden era Hollywood pre-code stuff rave about him. So I think I need to investigate some more Lubitsch before I would get that one. But I do love the screwball stuff, especially the pre-code ones where they were just allowed to. I mean, I think the Hays Code ones are kind of fun too, because it's one of those things where some restrictions and guardrails made them do some stuff that was actually in some ways funnier and more fun to watch perhaps than what they could have done otherwise. So it's almost fun to catch what are they actually talking about here? But the pre-code stuff is great too, obviously, because you kind of see it kind of breaks a lot of those preconceptions that I think a lot of more casual movie fans have about what movies were like before the 80s or the 70s or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely one of those kids who carried the script to... I had the script to Monty Python and the Holy Grail in a binder in my backpack in high school. And I imposed... I used my will to impose Monty Python stuff on my church youth group. So I am steeped in Life of Brian, and actually the pastor at my church, we did Monty Python skits together, and I was at one of a more conservative Lutheran congregation at the time. So yes, Life of Brian, that's a no-brainer.
And then we've got a couple of leaks from Dawn of the Disc. They watch, Blu-ray, 4K, physical media releases very closely, and more often than not, their leaks of future releases are pretty spot on correct. So
yeah,
this past week they've announced that Criterion is putting out Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which is Martin Scorsese's, I believe, second feature, as well as Deliverance. And then they've also announced that a 4K of the original Planet of the Apes is coming soon, as they say. So what do you think about these leaks we've got?
I mean, I sort of take it if that account reports that it's happening, I assume that it is. They're usually always right. It might take a while for the real news to leak, but yeah, I mean that all sounds great. And along with that, also, I think it's basically all of the Neon, all the international pictures that Neon is sort of fielding for the Oscars this year, I think are also coming to Criterion. But yeah, it's going to be. I think the leaks so far are The Secret Agent it was just an accident and sentimental value. So I mean, that's pretty amazing that those will be coming to physical soon, because some of these movies are hard to catch in a theater now, even if you live in a big city. I don't know if that's going to be this premieres line, because sometimes that's kind of, if they're fast tracking stuff, they might get a Criterion premieres release, which I sort of might prefer, because like sometimes these Criterion discs of brand new movies just don't have much on them, but they're still charging like $50 retail, or 25 on a sale for a disc that might not even have a commentary, or like they might have like a couple of short interviews. So I kind of prefer when they let those cook for a while in the cultural memory. But I mean, physical releases for these things are great, because a lot of these, it's not always guaranteed that a lot of these new international features are going to get a release from anyone. So
yeah, Criterion's put out several of Neon's Best Picture contenders in the past couple of years. Like they've put out like full editions of Triangle of Sadness, Anatomy of a Fall, and then most recently Anora. But yeah, like you said, for those getting spine numbers in the Criterion collection and being put out as quickly as they were compared to when they were, released in theaters and in the Oscar race, they're definitely not getting the full treatment that I wonder if this Criterion premieres line is going to provide.
But also the price point is lower. So I think the idea is like, we're going to get the movie out there, it's going to look great, and it's going to be at a reasonable price, like sub $30 retail usually. So on a sale you can get it pretty cheap. So
yeah, definitely.
One other from Dawn of the Discs that I wanted to call out. Oh yeah, Armageddon. Armageddon's getting a 4K. Not from Criterion, it doesn't say, because that was an early Criterion, either Laserdisc or I think it was one of the low single-digit spine numbers from them. It was a Criterion DVD.
Wow.
Decades ago, but it's not going to be a Criterion 4K, which that would have been pretty funny if that came back in. Pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely excited about Planet of the Apes. Again, I wish it was all 5 of the movies in a set, 5 of the sort of quote unquote original movies from the 60s and 70s, because I think all those are lots of fun to varying degrees of quality, quote unquote. But I love all those movies, and it would be fun to have all of them.
Yeah, what I'm kind of thinking is going to happen is that these are going to be probably from Kino, and they're going to do like the individual releases, and as well as like the full box set, like they did recently with the Airport series. That's what I'm kind of thinking, but we'll see how that plays out. And then elsewhere on the upcoming physical releases, just today as we were recording, Monday the 19th, Deaf Crocodile announced a couple of new releases. We've got here Song of the Miraculous Hind is getting a 4K release. I know absolutely nothing about this film, but the cover itself might make it be a blind buy for me. This cover is gorgeous. This is an animated film by Marcel Jankovics. And I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a Hungarian. They're billing it as an animated saga, and just knowing like the quality of the restorations and the physical releases that Deaf Crocodile has been putting out, this is kind of a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah, and he's the guy who made Son of the White Mare, which is an animated film that's been on my watch list for years. I need to see that, and I also have Deaf Crocodile's release of his The Tragedy of Man, which It's 160 minutes long, so I haven't been able to get into that. But that is another sort of epic about the creation and fall of man and stuff. So his movies look gorgeous, and Deaf Crocodile does such a good job with their animated stuff. So yeah, that's very exciting. And the other one was another set of Bill Plimpton movies.
Yeah, we've got 2004's Hair High. It's getting a Blu-ray debut from Deaf Crocodile. They posted a fun video on their Instagram of Bill Plimpton sending a message to everyone, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, they've done a couple of other Bill Plimpton sets. At least maybe I think it was a set of shorts and stuff. I haven't watched any of those yet, but they look really awesome. I mean, just his style is so distinctive, the sort of grotesque way he draws his characters.
All right, we've hit the bottom of the hour on the show, so that means it's time for our discussion on Jesse's pick this week, The Red Shoes. So, Jesse, if you'll take it away with a synopsis.
I'm just going to go ahead and basically read the back of this Criterion 4K that we watched, because they do such an amazing job with this. So, here's what Criterion has to say about The Red Shoes. The Red Shoes, the singular fantasia from Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, is cinema's quintessential backstage drama, as well as one of the most glorious Technicolor feasts ever concocted for the screen. Moira Shearer is a rising star ballerina torn between an idealistic composer and a ruthless impresario intent on perfection. Featuring outstanding performances, blazingly beautiful cinematography by Jack Cardiff, Oscar-winning sets and music, and an unforgettable, hallucinatory central dance sequence, this beloved classic, dazzlingly restored, stands as an enthralling tribute to the life of the artist. The Red Shoes.
All right, so this was your pick for this episode, which means you had never seen it before, but you had bought it. The physical copy, I believe you got the 4K from Criterion, which is what I watched it on as well. So why was this one a blind buy for you? Do you have any history with Powell and Pressburger or anything like that?
Even now, still remarkably little history with, to my great shame, with Powell and Pressburger. I've since seen Peeping Tom, which is just a Michael Powell picture. It's not a Powell and Pressburger picture, but he directed it, and that's sort of very different from a lot of the other stuff that they did. And I've also seen A Matter of Life and Death, which is one of their classics, one of their classics from their team up era. But that's it. That's all I've seen. I haven't seen The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, or any of their other notable movies. But this had, I think I'd always heard about the Red Shoes, even just as a kid, maybe because of the Hans Christian Andersen story that it's derived from, that the central ballet is an adaptation of. But I think it really came into view for me when I think I'd seen it probably on the list of it might have been one of Roger Ebert's great movies, because I sort of came into movies back in college, like reading through just his great reviews. He had like a section of the website that was like the great movies, and I always remembered seeing The Red Shoes. What's that about? But then I knew it would be one to experience this way in the 4K, when this was one of Criterion's first crop of 4Ks, actually, that they released. And I thought it would be fun to look back and to see if you could guess, just of some of the big labels, who do you think kind of got into the 4K game earliest, if you had to guess?
Ooh, can I get a hint? Was it a boutique label, or was it a studio proper?
Oh, these are boutiques. Like, I think studios have been putting out so I'm going to say of the boutique labels, yeah. But studios have been putting out 4Ks for a couple of years, I think, before this, yes.
Okay, then if I had to guess, I would probably say Arrow.
Kino was first.
Oh, really?
Yep,
okay.
it was, well, of the ones that I chose to talk about, but certainly of the big ones. I looked into the big ones. First was Kino with their first release was Hannibal, the sequel to The Silence of the Lambs, and that was in let's see. They announced it February 2019 was Hannibal, coming from Kino. Next, as far as I can tell, of the big ones, again, was Vinegar Syndrome. What do you think Vinegar Syndrome's first 4K was?
My God, I don't even know if I can guess. Was it a re-release of something they had already put out?
That I don't know. I don't know if they put this out before. I don't know if they tend to do that, but it was Tammy and the T-Rex was their first 4K, which I still haven't watched that. Kind of notorious and kind of on brand that was their first 4K. And that was November 2019. Then next came Arrow, May 2020, when they announced it, arriving August 2020. Pitch Black, Vin Diesel's Pitch Black, which I love that movie. That's great. That's a great sci-fi movie, and probably looks great on the 4K. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, just very strange choice for their first release, though.
Yeah, interesting. But I could see, kind of with the way the color and the night versus day thing works, I could see why you would pick that, like, to kind of show it off. And then so finally, November 2021 was when they announced Criterion finally. Because I remember, people were saying, like, when is Criterion going to get into the game with 4Ks? Because, like, everybody else is kind of beating them to the punch. And yeah, the first crop was Citizen Kane, Menace to Society, The Piano, Mulholland Drive, A Hard Day's Night, and The Red Shoes. And I think Uncut Gems was right there too. Was one of the first ones. Yeah. So I'd heard of all that to say. I had heard about the Red Shoes for years, but then when I heard it was going to be like one of their first 4K releases, I thought, well, clearly I have to wait until I can watch this, because at the time I didn't have a 4K player yet. I didn't have a 4K TV yet. So I thought this is how I need to experience this, if this is how visually sumptuous this is supposed to be. And it turns out that was a good decision, because it's gorgeous. It is such a beautiful movie. We'll talk later about the features that we watched, but I watched the breakdown of the restoration,
Yeah,
and
same.
and the it's I mean, just what they did to make this, to rescue this movie is incredible. I mean, that has to be the top line, just like talking about how this movie looks, like the three strip technicolor process that they restored. The production designer was a painter, and it shows, like, just the
Oh
way
yeah.
that everything looks in this movie.
Yeah, when like the biggest thing that you hear about the Red Shoes is the use of color in the movie. And so seeing some of the like archival footage or like used in the documentary that there was a 2000 documentary on the Blu-ray, and some of the shots that are in there are just so lacking in the color that this 4K restoration has, that you wonder, like, watching it back then, you have to imagine they were not getting the same effect of like those really strong, like powerful close-ups where red is the most vibrant color on the screen, but you can also see like every subtle skin tone change, and using like the theatrical lighting to kind of change what you're seeing, especially during the ballet sequence and like how you're seeing it. I have to imagine that like, before this 4K restoration, even watching it projected on film back in the day, it is just not the same experience. Yeah, I watched this for the first time in 2024 for my Criterion challenge. I watched this and Black Narcissus back to back, which is another Powell and Pressburger film. And yeah, I was just completely floored by it. I think I gave it 4 stars at the time, and raised that to 4.5 stars maybe a couple weeks after, because I just like I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was just taking up so much space in my mind. If you want, we can start kind of at the beginning with the opening scene of the film, which is where the audience is rushing into the theater to see a ballet, and then we find out that there are a bunch of music students in the balcony who are not there to watch the ballet. They're there to hear the music of their professor, and one of the main college students who is up there to watch is Julian Craster, who is an aspiring composer. As the ballet begins, he realizes that his professor that he's there to watch has actually stolen his music.
Yeah, yeah, and it sort of is the intro to kind of what I think is one of the supreme creative process movies, and like movies about just artistic collaboration and who ultimately gets credit for how art is created, and especially with something as collaborative as, if you think about a ballet, it's just like all the moving parts that go into staging a ballet every night. Between there's dancers, there's sets, there's an orchestra, there's costumes, and you really get to see like the full breadth of what it takes to put that on, from like when they're kind of getting together to put this production on early on, to like kind of the opening night and everything. Anton Walbrook plays Boris Lermontov, the sort of impresario of this ballet company, and he's pretty ruthless as a driver of his people and a businessman, but you also see that he's really good at what he does.
Yeah.
As sort of like when things are hectic, he knows what to say to get everyone kind of motivated. He's also kind of a monster.
Yeah, he's the kind of like artistic creative who like finds the people that he thinks are talented, but is not going to give them the attention or the fulfillment that they need to to make them satisfied, because he wants them to keep pushing for more and more. And so when he finds Vicky Page, played by Maura Shearer, in this film, he kind of has her like thrust upon him at this party that her aunt is throwing, and she was going to have Vicky dance in front of the crowd as a kind of like audition for him. And he has that line where he's like, I don't come to these parties expecting an audition. And then he meets her at the bar over champagne cocktails and kind of puts his foot in his mouth, where he's like, I heard someone is supposed to dance for us tonight, but we're to be spared that horror. And Vicky's like, well, I'm that horror. And I think the way that she kind of claps back to him a little bit intrigues him. And they have that conversation where he says, why do you want to dance? And her reply is, well, why do you want to live? That is the core of the movie. Dancing is life. Life is dancing to these people. And even Lermontov's answer to that question, which is I don't know, but I know that I must, is the driving force behind even the decisions that Vicky makes as the story progresses, and the things that she has to choose between. And something interesting that I read in the essay that's included in the Criterion box is the idea that this is a post-war film. So Powell and Pressburger were looking for a movie to make that was not connected to, wartime or anything like that at all. And so there's this idea in this movie that as the war was winding down, people were still kind of in that mindset that to die is to like serve your country or to serve democracy, that kind of thing. And so to die for your art, that is something that is just completely opposite from the mindset of the people at the time of the release of this movie. And hearing it framed like that, that really struck me.
That sort of dichotomy that he sets up as like early on, the prima ballerina of the company is seen sort of leaving to go get married, and he makes it sound like this is the worst decision she could have made for her career. In addition to, Victoria already has it in her head, like, my life is dance, this is what I'm here to do, my life is my art. But then to hear him also saying, like, yeah, and if you try to make room for anything else, there's no way you'll get to the top. As the movie progresses, we're made to wonder whether that's really true. Once the relationship between Craster and Victoria kind of blossoms, and you see that there is, some potential for there to be artistic partnership and for her to be like his muse and whatnot, it sort of calls into question whether those choices are real. And even, Lermontov himself, you come to realize he's a venal person himself also. Like, he also, like, sees what they have in addition to being great artists. He sees this, like, relationship that they have, and it really tears him up that this is something he has all this success, but he doesn't have this. He can't possess her in this more sort of base way that he clearly wants to, like when he makes a reservation for two after opening night, but she doesn't show up and she's partying with Craster instead, and you can see the look on his face. Like, he's not thinking about art anymore. He's just thinking about power and what he sees that he can't have.
I was thinking along the lines of Lermontov's desire for power, like to use these people that he finds kind of as tools to achieve his like artistic vision. You can see him throughout the rehearsal process because they're putting together the ballet, adapting the Red Shoes, and Craster is responsible for writing the score. He basically takes an existing score that Lermontov has had him kind of edit, and then they throw that out the window, and Craster is now responsible for writing the score, and they have Victoria Page as the lead dancer. You can see Lermontov positioning Vicky and Julian together to kind of get them to, spar with each other to make that artistic spark kind of happen. There's a shot of Lermontov kind of watching them go at it, and it's kind of like he's watching the artistic process like happening in real time, and you can see on his face like he's got this crazy grin, and he's like, yes, this is happening, and it's because of me, essentially. And I think that's kind of like the distillation of that feeling of power that he's trying to achieve. So when later he realizes that like they're actually in love and he's kind of losing that power over them, you can see that in his face. And I think Anton Walbrook has this kind of like pent up rage like inside of him that really comes across on screen kind of unlike any other performer that I've seen. It's almost like behind the eyes almost. Like he's not shaking, he's not growling on ominously or whatever, but it's so contained, but it's so like right under the surface. That rage.
It's interesting when you say about the tight focus on faces and the face acting we see, because we get a lot of face acting too from Moira Shearer, even during the dance sequences. I didn't really know too much about the story going in. I knew that I kind of maybe thought that it was like, oh, it's just an adaptation of a ballet. It's mostly going to be like a staging of the ballet, and that portion is exquisite and obviously what the movie's most well known for. But I felt like all these other ideas around it kind of really helped prop it up and not make it just like, I'm gonna sit and look at this movie until the ballet starts. There's really a lot more going on that was really quite moving. And the movie's shot in Academy ratio, so you'd think a movie like this would be like, oh, it's gonna be widescreen. You're gonna see like this huge expansive canvas where you can see like all the dancers and stuff. But it's actually pretty tight, and I think that's even just the fact that they're able to capture the dance sequences as expertly as they do on such a tight box was really striking to me. And I think Jack Cardiff, I watched a little bit of some of the features work. Jack Cardiff had some very uncharitable things to say about ballet and dancing. So he knew nothing about shooting ballet before he started this, but
Yeah.
I mean, he did an incredible job of capturing those ballet sequences.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a ballet? I'm curious.
A couple. I've seen the Nutcracker here in Seattle and maybe one or two others. I'm not a dance guy. I don't know from ballet that's great or not. But I think one of the hardest things to do in movies that are about art that try to depict fictional art that we're supposed to understand to be great, it can often go quite bad. Like it can fall flat. Like this is the thing you're trying to tell me is like the greatest version of. Even last week, kind of like when we talked about Almost Famous.
Yeah.
It was good that Stillwater was just kind of like a pretty good 70s band, right? They weren't like the next huge thing, but I mean, you get Nancy Wilson and Peter Frampton to write you some songs. You're going to get some pretty good songs. But I mean, watching this, it felt like this was incredible artistry at work on screen. So they really sold that. If the one thing they had to do was to sell the idea that this was a great ballet, like a work of genius, they really did it.
Yeah, and it helps so much that they cast real dancers, because I could not imagine a version of this story where they don't have real ballet dancers in these leading roles. And so, like, they talk about it in the bonus features where the role of Vicky Page was meant to be played by Merle Oberon at one point, and they were going to have her perform the acting scenes herself and then switch to an actual ballet dancer during the ballet sequences. And I can't imagine that would have been successful by any means, because what makes the ballet so like poignant is that this is the same person we've been watching this whole time struggle with her decision between committing her life to dance, dying for her art, basically, and discovering love and wanting to have that choice. That's reflected in the plot of the ballet itself. So having the same character, the same face, to see that all play out on across the whole film, including the ballet, is really powerful. And especially having you've got Robert Helpman, who was a world famous ballet artist as well at the time, playing one of the dancers, Boleslavsky, as well as Leonid Messine, who was playing Grisha Lubov. They were both, from what I can tell in the reading, leading up to this film, they were both huge names in the ballet world, and they both seem to have kind of the egos to match. Robert Helpman was the one who choreographed the whole ballet in this film, and then Leonid Messine, who played Lubov, is credited as creating the role of the shoemaker, which he portrays in the ballet itself. So it helps to have these really talented artists in these essential roles.
Yeah, no, they both fit in. I mean, colorful characters in the ballet company, they're also good. What you mentioned earlier about Lermontov being sort of the antagonist and playing people off each other, even just during the ballet itself, when it starts to switch more to the pure fantasy, it was an amazing ballet sequence, but it also did stuff that you cannot do in conventional ballet, that they're doing using with filmic techniques, with like when she jumps into the shoes, and later when she's sort of dancing through these composites of like a fantasy world where she's clearly not on the stage anymore. There are a lot of like sort of how did they do that moment when she's dancing with a newspaper and it changes into a person, but also when you see the shoemaker's face like flickers between Lermontov as clearly like her antagonist, but then also Craster shows up. Kind of like before they're in the romance portion of the story, Craster also flickers through as like the shoemaker briefly, as sort of like the person who's like kind of driving her to move beyond, because I think they keep saying like it's all about the music. Everything here is about the music.
Yeah, nothing matters but the music. That's such a big recurring phrase in the film. But yeah, this ballet has it all. Like, not only does it adapt Hans Christian Andersen's story of the Red Shoes, but it's also like this psychological portrait of Vicky as a dancer.
The way they put it together, it also just maps to the whole movie is sort of like a fairy tale within a fairy tale, because the everything happening, especially with the way it ends, it's very much like we're watching a fairy tale. It's you know, and the way that it maps to what they're experiencing in the real world and the choices they're having to make. Yeah, it's just a masterful sort of microcosm here in the middle of this movie. That drives it all home.
And this is going to sound cringy, but when they are writing the ballet and like preparing the score and everything, Lermontov is telling the group that's helping put on the show, he's telling them, I want the audience to applaud, not at the end, but in the middle. And placing this virtuosic ballet sequence like smack dab in the middle of his film, it's causing the audience to applaud in the middle of the film. Like Powell and
Yep.
Pressburger are
Yep.
doing that.
They
It
called the
sounds
shot.
cringy to say,
Yep.
but yeah. I thought that was the symmetry there is so cool. Before we talk about the ending, because I've got a couple of small notes in here that are mainly just me kind of like salivating over the cinematography and stuff.
Yeah, for me, it was the shots with the mirrors. There were a couple of shots with the mirrors in the ballet studios where
Yes, oh my
they
God.
make it's like shot at an angle and they make it look huge, and then someone walks into the frame. I mean, it was like my jaw dropped, like when the mirrors showed up in the ballet studios and the way they set that up. There was just so many casual, like there's like that oneer during the dream sequence when Lermontov is sort of imagining them together, the way that was shot. Where he wakes up and goes to the piano and it was like yet another just miniature fantasy sequence that was like casually great thrown in toward the end. Yeah, so many great things like that.
Yeah, there's a great use of color in that sequence too, or lack of color, I should say, because like their whole life has been color and brightness and stuff. But when he's imagining what their life together is like without dance, without music, there's barely any color in that sequence at all. Like Vicky's got her shoes like stuffed in a drawer and she's looking at them kind of furtively, but they're not as colorful as they would be because it's so dark in this room. I thought that was really fantastic use of color there. There's the shot of her ascending the stairs to what I think is Lermontov's, like, I mean, it looks like a palace, but it's his home in like Paris or Monte Carlo or wherever they're at, where they're kind of working out the kinks in the score for the Red Shoes. But that is the most fairy tale moment in this whole film because she's wearing her big blue dress with like the purple ruffles. She gets out of the car and she just like is ascending this ginormous staircase. It's very Cinderella, very Beauty and the Beast, and it feels almost mythical. You know, like they talk in some of the bonus features about how like the original Hans Christian Andersen story was made at a time where people were looking for new stories to tell that had a mythical quality, and I think the Red Shoes as a whole, and especially in these sequences that are just so drenched in like ornate costumes and incredible production design, is creating that mythical fairy tale sense.
Yeah. So maybe this is the point where we spoil the end of the Red Shoes. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to skip ahead a few minutes. Because it is worth talking about. I mean, yeah.
We'll have our discussion too about the physical media release itself of this, but yeah, I definitely want to spend maybe like 5 minutes on the end of this film and get your thoughts on it. So yeah, we're putting the line in the sand right here. If you don't want the ending of the Red Shoes spoiled for you, this is your warning.
They're doing another staging of the Red Shoes because they have not done the Red Shoes since she left, and it's sort of like the triumphant announcement that she's going to come back, and the woman who originated the role is going to wear the red shoes again and dance this thing that has not been danced in some time since she left the company. She's back. But she puts on the shoes. She's thinking about, the fact that she's here doing this, but the love of her life isn't there doing it with her. And the choice is put to Victoria about, whether she wants to kind of stay with Lermontov and dance or choose to go be with Craster because Craster decides to leave and go back to working on his opera. Just like in the play, the shoes seem to compel her to run down a hallway over to outside, and there's this incredible shot of her running down an iron, really tight iron staircase with just the shoes. I'm sure there's a GIF out there that looks amazing that I'm gonna have to find. She runs outside and she runs over the balcony, basically in front of a moving train. And Julian sees this happen and she dies in his arms. Basically says, take off the red shoes.
Then the real gut punch is that they continue with the performance of the Red Shoes, but leave an empty space for Vicky.
Empty spotlight. Yep.
During the entire performance. And the first time I saw that, I was haunted. There's just something so unnerving about performers performing around an empty space that's clearly meant to be filled by someone. And not only that, but the performers are so clearly overcome with emotion. And even when Lermontov, steps in front of the curtain to announce that Victoria Page cannot dance tonight, nor will she ever dance again, that is just so gut-wrenching. What did you think about that sequence?
I mean, I couldn't believe it. I ran it back after she falls and she's on the ground and there's people crowded around her. I ran it back just to see the shot from when the shoes appear to sort of come to life and take her. So I guess there is a question. I mean, at the very basics of agency, right? Like, is she making a choice? Is it in fact some magic of the shoes that's compelling her to run outside, just like in the play or in the ballet rather? The shoes are make the main character in the ballet dance until she's dead because she sort of made this deal with Satan essentially. In the reality of the movie, is it in fact her sort of saying no to, the choice put before her by her own sort of Mephistopheles character of Lermontov, and she had to choose between one or the other. And because this is a fairy tale fundamentally, and it's not like I don't think that they're trying to make any real statement about choices that people have to make, but since this is meant to be like a tragic tale, this is how tragedies end. So I just thought it was really moving. Yeah.
What struck me on this watch is that when Julian leaves his opera to come see Vicky and try to, implore her not to dance again, the first thing Vicky says to him is, "What, you left your first night of your opera? Like, you left your first night of your performance?" And he fires back pretty quickly, "Well, yeah, why didn't you?" Just kind of like the audacity of him asking her to give up her dream while he continues his in this scenario with these like fairy tale trappings. It's kind of like you almost can't even believe that he would expect that of her, because he knows how passionate she is about her dreams, because he's just as passionate about his, and it seems kind of like an impossible question, even more so when he phrases it, exactly like that. Maybe hearing the question posed like that is kind of what causes that kind of internal confusion for Vicky.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie I wish I could have seen twice before we talked about it, because there's just, so many things that one would catch on a rewatch, that for a movie like this especially, you're just so struck by everything that's happening on the screen. Yeah, so I for sure look forward to rewatching this so I can sort of dig into some of those nuances a bit more.
I just have a couple quick things I wanted to shout out before we move to talking about the release. There are a couple of really interesting like POV shots during the dance sequences, but especially the one where Vicky hasn't joined the Red Shoes ballet yet, but Lermontov is going to watch her, and she's like spinning and whipping her head around really fast, and so we're seeing it from her point of view, and the audience spins and then comes into focus. I had never seen anything like that. I thought that was awesome. And even something that in the bonus features, there's a ballet expert that speaks in the bonus features about watching that scene and seeing like the precision of her head turns, and seeing that as a ballet dancer, seeing how she gets that perfectly is kind of astonishing, because, as a ballet dancer, you might not be as familiar with the rhythms of filming and having to cut and like redo a take, that kind of thing. So to be that consistently perfect all the time for a dancer in a film is something really notable. Something funny that I noticed in the scene where Vicky and Julian are like having lunch and he's supposed to play the music for her so she gets familiar with the music. I think she's having orange juice or something, but she throws like 3 whole spoonfuls of sugar in her orange juice. And I thought that was a deranged choice.
Yeah, he did. Someone was eating like what looked like a grapefruit earlier, and I thought maybe, it's a grapefruit, so they have to sweeten it up a little bit. But yeah, that was crazy. One of them for me was Lermontov. We see him in this robe or a set of pajamas that looks like an Afghan rug, like this is exquisitely quilted like thing. I was like, man, look at that. And then later he like sort of is sitting on this divan or chaise lounge, just looking like a total emperor. Like, it's just, I mean, just the overall art direction of the movie again is just like astounding. Like everywhere you look there's something amazing, and even some of the funnier choices, like when they're the balcony, when they're in Monte Carlo, it's clearly just kind of like a blue background out there that they're staring out at, but given that it's like a movie about the stage and the theater, I was just kind of like, yep, they're in Monte Carlo, like looking outside. Yeah.
Something that kind of rankled the theater kid in me is during the first production of the Red Shoes, before kind of like the Dream Ballet goes into effect, the overture has started. nobody is in places, and they can't find the red shoes. That really irked me. Like, why are these shoes not set? Whose job was it? Somebody failed. Somebody's getting fired, in my opinion. But Lermontov is just taking it like he's rolling with the punches, which is such a strange thing to happen because we know he's such a control freak. But having been kind of in the theater world and like being married to a theater director, kind of seeing that, like, once opening night happens, all the worries are behind you. And so I think that kind of feels accurate. And then the giant ass wine bottle that Lubov pulls out on his birthday killed me. Oh my God.
Well, that's a whole thing. There's like a whole gradation of wine bottle sizes that are like, I'm just gonna, like the Melchior, there's a Melchizedek, which is a 30-liter wine bottle. It's kind of a thing that you would see, I guess, certainly on the Riviera. But yeah, that was very funny. And it also said the choreographer character. It had his name on the label because it was his birthday.
Yeah. Yeah, Lubov.
Kasha de Grisha or something like that, because that was his first name. Yes,
Yeah.
that was lots of fun. I mean, just him vamping in all those scenes was just so great.
And then my last note, you had mentioned the incredible shot of Vicky running down like the iron staircase in the red shoes, and then coming to find in the bonus features, she was moving too fast for the camera to follow her. So their solution was to keep her centered in the frame, and they spun the staircase. Just ingenious.
That makes sense. I kind of thought something like that might be happening because it had a very hyper reality feel to it. Should we talk about the release a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I sort of dipped in and out of a few of the features. I didn't watch all of the documentary, but it wasn't that long. It was only like 25 minutes. But I watched the storyboard comparison between the storyboards for the Ballet of the Red Shoes, and you can watch it with a side-by-side comparison of the actual sequence from the film. And you can also, if you want, turn on audio of Jeremy Irons reading the novel of the Red Shoes. So I did that, and that was very pleasurable to listen to Jeremy Irons read a novel while looking at these gorgeous paintings and seeing the Ballet of the Red Shoes playing out. That was really cool. You could also listen to have that novel, that audiobook essentially playing in the background as you watch the film if you wanted.
Yeah, that's how I watched the comparison as well with the Jeremy Irons reading. I thought it was fantastic. And to see how detailed those storyboards were, and especially capturing the wide shots of the stage where they can really use the height of the stage with the matte paintings in the background and stuff, they had that all storyboarded out. I thought that was insane. And something they mentioned, like, in the lead up to that feature, is that they had this whole thing storyboarded, and then they would film the ballet, I believe, in sequence, and they would just replace the storyboards with the stuff that they shot that day. And so they would be kind of like filling out the storyboard in real time. I thought that was super interesting.
I started watching the interview with Thelma Schoonmaker, who was, I think after they were basically done making most of these movies, was married to Michael Powell. But I stopped because she started saying some things that I wanted to say. Like, obviously, and I thought to myself, have all the takes been taken? What are we doing here? Do I have anything new to say about the Red Shoes? But I would like to go back and listen to the rest of it, because she's she's incredible. She's Scorsese's editor and was deeply involved in the restoration of the film, I think, at least talking about how it should be done, if not the actual nuts and bolts of it. Did you listen to that, or did you watch that?
Yeah, I did. It was right after the restoration had premiered at Cannes, I think in 2009, 2010. It's only, I would say, maybe about half about the Red Shoes. The other half, the interviewer asks her about her work with Scorsese, their love of restoration together, like the things they do in the editing room to kind of get like in the groove. It's like a 20-minute unbroken shot of her just talking and like sharing her experiences and stuff. So that's very valuable. You said you didn't watch too much of the 2000 making of documentary, right?
Maybe just the first five minutes. I saw the interview with the ballerina who talked about her experience of seeing the movie as a child. I think they talked to Jack Cardiff and a couple other people. So
yeah, I think the main thing I took away from that was that the production company, the J. Arthur Rank, his organization, they thought it was going to be a disaster after their first showing. But it wasn't until I think they started showing it in America, or a different distribution company took it to New York, and it played there for 2 years, that it became such a big success. So So I thought that was interesting. Like, to us now, I mean, this is obviously a classic and it's made so many best of lists and all that. But to think that at the time, the people distributing the film didn't think it would work.
My favorite feature was, I think, just the Scorsese talking about the restoration, because you get to see what it looked like, the original 3-strip Technicolor negatives look like, and just the extra challenges of restoring 3-strip Technicolor, because negatives shrink over time, but since there were 3 of these negatives, they shrunk at different rates, so the images didn't necessarily match up. In addition to all, like, there was mold on the negatives, the scratches and stuff, so they ended up doing a lot of it digitally, and this is before AI was a thing, so they didn't use AI or anything like that. It was a really great showcase for, like, how you can meld modern tools for restoration with classical ones, and just, I mean, the results are just amazing. I mean, it's as pristine as you can imagine it looking, and yeah, just gives you a real appreciation of the wizardry that goes into restoring these things. UCLA Film and Television, they do a lot of great stuff. UCLA does a lot of these restorations, but it's also the boutique labels that are putting in the work on these movies that are not as great as The Red Shoes, we'll just say.
Yeah, yeah, for real.
Lots of movies that are not The Red Shoes deserve love like this too, so it's cool to see how it's done.
Yeah, I think Scorsese said it was like 500,000 frames of film were scanned and had to be retouched and all that. Just incredible effort. Otherwise, I think features, there are production stills from, throughout the production, posters and one-sheets and all of that good stuff, just to kind of scroll through.
Scorsese owns The Red Shoes.
Yes, the actual red shoes.
He has the red shoes in his house, along with the other museum pieces of so that was funny to see the showcase of his red shoe memorabilia, which I guess it makes sense that he would have things because he works with Thelma Schoonmaker.
And then the essay "Dancing for Your Life" by David Ehrenstein in the insert of the release as well. It was a good read, kind of short. My feeling overall on this Criterion release, obviously the 4K restoration is the reason to buy it. I don't think that this is like an all-out, features-wise release, considering, they've got a couple of commentaries and the restoration feature and all of that is great stuff, but it's no, like, Do the Right Thing that got, 2 extra Blu-rays or whatever full of features.
The commentary does have Moira Shearer and Marius Goring on it, and Jack Cardiff, so that's kind of like, this is like voices from the past who were there and were in it. So that's I would love to rewatch it with that, just to hear stories of how they did some of this stuff and what was going through their heads. But no, you're right. I'd say overall, and I'd say maybe is kind of indicative of what Criterion's up to generally these days. They're honestly, like, I would say their features packages these days are not always as impressive as you would expect them to be. But obviously the work they put into what these things look like is great. And for that reason, it's a keeper for me for sure.
Yep, keeper for me as well. It's going back on my shelf. I think I'm going to make it my mission this year to watch the Powell and Pressburger films that Criterion has put out. Because I have this one, I have Black Narcissus, I have A Matter of Life and Death, and I've pre-ordered I Know Where I'm Going, which is getting a 4K release later this year. Oh, and The Life of Death of Colonel Blimp. So I want to get more into their filmography, because I am loving the way they use production design, color, all that good stuff. So
yeah, I have the Criterion Laserdisc of Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. I don't know if I'll watch it that way, but
that could be an interesting experiment. Do you have a Laserdisc player?
I rent one from Scarecrow. $6 for the week, and you can take a Laserdisc player home. So I've watched a few things. It's mostly the Laserdiscs I have are mostly for display purposes. They still sound really good, but they're sort of really stretched to their limits on a 4K OLED TV.
That makes sense.
You start to kind of see the cracks. At the time, this was like, this is the way to watch these movies. And if you had like a primo home setup with surround sound system, you can see why. Some of them still look better than early DVDs if you have one that's in good shape. But yeah, they're mostly kind of curios for me now. So.
Yeah, I'm sad to say I've never seen a movie that I can recall on Laserdisc. I would like to, but I don't. Just to get the full experience, because I've gone through VHS, DVD all the way through, but Laserdisc, no, never.
Well, right. We have received some feedback on our first couple episodes, which is really amazing, to the email address, blindbuyspod@gmail.com.
We've got our first letter here from our friend Scott. He says, "Hey, Jesse and Josh, excited for you to be starting this new pod and to listen along to your adventures. The Red Shoes is really the greatest, isn't it? I have the Criterion disc, which I got after watching it streaming, and then I was fortunate enough to catch it in theaters 3 separate times in 2024, so I actually still haven't watched it on the Blu-ray. But you're inspiring me to pop it in. No movie has ever looked better. Cheers, and looking forward to more." Thank you, Scott.
It's great. Thank you, Scott.
3 times in theaters. My gosh.
Well, Scott and Kev, they live in New York City, so they've got, the Museum of the Moving Image, where I saw Kundun there. Thelma Schoonmaker introduced it when it was on Scorsese's print, because at the time, it was still being suppressed, I believe, by Disney, possibly at the behest of the Chinese government. It's easier to see now. But in the mid-aughts, it was a hard movie to see. So, Museum of the Moving Image, a really amazing place, awesome programming. Next, we heard from our friend Brandon. He writes, "Jesse and Josh, first of all, congrats on the launch of the new show and great work on your first few episodes." Thank you, Brandon. Few podcasts are more up my alley than this one. That said, I'm wondering if the two of you have ever thought of what some of your dream releases would be, specifically for those types of movies that are very important to you and maybe haven't gotten a quality physical release, or have releases that you consider substandard based on how much you love the film. For bonus points, I'd love to hear what boutique label you think would be a good fit. For mine, there are 3 main white whales I'd love to see happen. Blue Ruin. Second Sight has already done a spectacular release of Jeremy Saulnier's Green Room. I'd love to see them give the same treatment to this modern masterpiece. Best of the Best, a late 80s karate classic starring Eric Roberts and James Earl Jones that I wore the VH out on back in the day. This just screams Vinegar Syndrome Ultra to me. Yes, it does. Pumping Iron. There's a crappy Blu-ray of this with very little special features to speak of. I'd love to see Arrow Video give this the thick, chunky box set treatment and really blow out the back matter like this classic deserves. Get Arnold and Lou Ferrigno back together for a new commentary track and make sure the phenomenal documentary Raw Iron, the making of Pumping Iron, is on there as well. Excited to hear your picks and to see where you take the show. I'll be following along every step of the way. Thanks, Brendan.
Yeah, thanks
what
for
do you
the
think,
words,
Josh?
Brendan. Okay, so I just wrote down a couple off the top of my head. We've mentioned California Split in the past. I think we've mentioned it in our first episode. I think we both think that's going to be a cinematograph release at some point or another, but that's a great Robert Altman film. I would love to see a trilogy box set of the Knives Out trilogy. Obviously, 2 of the 3 films are Netflix films, and they rarely get physical media releases. But I think now that the trilogy is complete, that would be a great time for them to put out a box set. I think the main Netflix films that have gotten physical media releases in the past have gone through Criterion. I don't necessarily see the Knives Out trilogy getting the Criterion treatment, just because the vibe doesn't match there. There was, a couple years ago, a fantastic film that came out of, I think, Sundance, and it ended up on Hulu, called Theater Camp. Really great movie about a theater camp and the people who run it, and the musical that they put on over a summer. It's just a fantastic comedy, hilarious songs, great cast, and no physical media release for it. I would just love for it to get any kind of release, a studio release even. Just Disney Searchlight, put that out, please. Theater Camp. Another one here I would love to get is 9 to 5, which had a Twilight Time Blu-ray, but is currently out of print and cannot be gotten for, I think, less than $100 anywhere. So I would love another release of that to happen. How about a cinematograph release of 9 to 5 with the nice hardcover? That would be amazing. Let's make that happen. And finally, this one is pretty far out of left field, but I would like Star Booty featuring RuPaul to get a boutique release, maybe from Melusine, the Vinegar Syndrome partner label. But this is just like real trashy, low budget, like made on the street in the 80s film starring RuPaul as a spy named Star Booty. I have a bootleg DVD of this that I cannot remember where I got it from, but if this got the full like Vinegar Syndrome treatment, obviously with RuPaul's blessing, but to make that happen would be like the biggest white whale that I could think of.
Some of my white whales are coming to pass. Excalibur is coming from Arrow. Krull just came out, which is a movie very near and dear to my heart. Sort of, I mean, I don't know why I'm gravitating toward these fantasy movies, but another one that doesn't have a boutique or really a 4K at all yet is Clash of the Titans.
Yeah,
the original one. In fact, when Arrow announced when Titans ruled the Earth, I was like, this is it, but it turns out it's the new ones, and so that was a big disappointment.
Oh man,
I think I saw the first one; it was fine, but I want the original one, and give me lots of features about how the Harryhausen stuff. I'll watch hours and hours and hours of seeing how they made. This all the stuff, all the incredible things in that movie, and just another simple one, which I think we'll probably get sooner rather than later. Now that some of these are starting to come out, is just the Muppet movie. I love the Muppets, and it's hard to see them, those movies, the classic ones, kind of caught behind the Disney wall. So hopefully, at least we get the original. I think Muppets Take Manhattan came out in 4K, so they're starting to come. We'll get that sooner rather than later, I think. But Muppet Christmas Carol doesn't have one, but so yeah, give me my classic strange. Muppets.
Yeah, the Muppet Christmas Carol, it's streaming on Disney Plus in 4K, so they have the scan of that they could put a 4K Blu-ray out of, but they won't do it, the cowards. Yep. And yeah, the original Muppet movie has, I think, just like a bare bones Blu-ray release from like 10 years ago. So that would be fantastic. And then final letter here, real quick, from Mike. He says, "Hello, friends. Just listened to your first 2 episodes. Not only do I love this concept and hope to take some blind buy journeys with you, but I'm also incredibly jealous of you coming out of the gate sounding like seasoned professionals." Oh, thank you so much. Saying blind buying movies is akin to buying a book you've never read is the absolutely perfect comparison. Sure, some of these are going to be duds, but that is offset by those 5-star experiences you didn't see coming. He says, a few of my favorite blind buys are Vinegar Syndrome's Southern Comfort, Radiance's 18 Years in Prison, and everything Douglas Sirk in the Criterion Collection. And last but not least, Enter the Video Store from Arrow, a magnificent 5-movie set of 80s gems from several genres. Again, just wanted to give you some huge props for this endeavor, and I look forward to future episodes and new discoveries. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I got to add 18 Years in Prison to my watch list to check that out. I have not seen that one, but yeah, Radiance, love to see what they dig up, always. Great picks.
Yeah, I just got the Southern Comfort 4K used from Orbit. That should be coming here in the mail quite soon.
It's so good. Southern Comfort's a lot of fun. Yeah, if you haven't seen it. Have you seen it yet?
No, it's a blind buy.
Okay,
so
great.
Future episode, maybe.
Good stuff, maybe. Speaking of future episodes, Josh, it's your pick.
All right. So I have been trying to figure out how weird I want to go, how fast. And I think I'm probably going to give it another episode before I get into the real crazy stuff. So kind of thinking about this past week, it's the 1-year anniversary of David Lynch's passing. There has been one film of his filmography that I've been holding off on for no reason in particular, maybe other than just I didn't want my Lynch discoveries to be over. So for next week, I have picked Wild at Heart, starring Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern. This was put out by Shout Factory on the Shout Select line. It's spine number 46. I've got the Blu-ray right here, and so this is my pick for next episode.
Love it. I've only seen that one once, and it had the typical, well, that was a movie response to that you sometimes have with Lynch, so I'm very excited to dig into that one. Love it. Great pick.
Yeah, so we will see everyone next episode for my pick, Wild at Heart. If you have any thoughts on Wild at Heart, David Lynch, The Red Shoes, Almost Famous, anything we've talked about in these recent episodes, you can email us or send us a voicemail at blindbuyspod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at blindbuyspod and see what we're up to over there. And we'll see you next episode.
Bye, everybody.